All right, everyone. So, like I said, we're about to get started. I am Crystal Washington, and I am one of the leaders of the YAMS, the Young Adult Ministry here at Zion Church Woodbridge. We're so glad to have you this morning. We are a group of Christ-like individuals, and we are between the ages of 21 and 35, and you are always welcome to come, learn, grow, and join us. If you're interested in joining our group, hit us in the chat. Somebody will take down your information. We'll make sure we connect you. But today, as we're talking about finances, again, we thought it'd be really important to open it up to everyone because everyone is looking to do better and be better when it comes to their finances, especially in these times of today. So we have brought back Mr. Teddy Fano so he can come in and tell us everything we need to know. Last week we had a lot, or I'm sorry, last time we had a lot of questions. But today I thought it would be really good to start with saving because that's what is keeping a lot of people afloat is our savings. So Teddy, take it away. Can we unmute Teddy? There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Perfect. So I was saying thank you again, Crystal, for allowing me to be here again on this platform. I'm glad to be here to share as much information as I can. Just happy to be with the Zion family again, and you guys, let's go for it. Last time we had about an hour. This time we got 30 minutes extra, thanks to Mistress Washington. So fire off. I see my man Nate Benjamin there, so I'm going to use him as my backup. I know he and I never even talk about it. He's like, Teddy, what do you mean? Yeah, Nate, I'm going to refer to you every now and then here. Even Doug too. I'm gonna have your pitching. But I wanted to be. I say this to say, like I said on the last call, um, I like things being interactive. I hate to sound, and Crystal knows this about me. I hate to sound scripted and bring a whole bunch of stuff here and show it. I could do that, but I'm not going to. So I just want you guys to feed me as many questions as you can, and then I'll do my best to answer it. I don't have all the answers, but I come with a wealth of knowledge and a lot of resources too. So even if I don't have the answer, I can assure you I'll know where to go and get it for you. So yeah.
All right. So some questions we had previously
Yep.
is we'll start very general. Who should we bank with as far as like our savings?
Yeah.
Who should we save with? How much should we be saving? I know you mentioned last time it depends, but I
Yeah.
guess just an overall goal for us to strive.
Right. It's a good question. On the banking side, man, I don't want to rub people wrong or start calling out some banks here. I work for a bank. I worked for a bank for close to 11 years. It was First Union Bank. Some of you guys are fairly young. You probably wouldn't know that. And I heard Crystal say the age ranges here on the YAM scores from like 21 to 35. That's what you said, Crystal? Well, I ain't fall in that category. I'm way past that part. Um, but I say all of this to say, so I worked for Wachovia Bank, and then we became Wells Fargo. Banks are not they're not terrible to bank with. As far as the best ones, they all come wrapped in different packages. To be honest with you, my own personal choice is will probably be credit unions. And I give you an example. I worked for a bank for 11 years. When I first came to the U.S., because I'm not originally from here, my mom worked for the credit union. Then she had opened a credit union account for me. She had $20 put into that credit union account. When I left the bank in 2009, because we all got laid off due to the financial crisis, I shut down all my bank accounts with Wachovia Bank then or Wells Fargo then, and I returned back to the credit union. That $20 was still in that bank account. It had not lost any a smidget because banks kind of put your account in what's called dormancy. It becomes a dormant status if you're not doing any activities, and then they just hit you a plethora of fees. So long story short, credit unions are a better choice. Their fees are a lot lower. They're even a better choice if you're looking to purchase a car, a home, or even getting credit cards. So their fees are a lot lower. You can have a simple checking account with no fees attached to it, with no direct deposit strings attached to it, and just open your simple savings account, and you can have multiple of those with credit unions, and you'll be fine. So you don't have to worry about an annual or monthly fee. As far as savings, there's a general rule of thumb, and I know being with the church, we always say do 10% to to the church, and then I think 10%. Crystal, help me on this one. Is it
Pastor Battle mentioned in one of his sermons, we do 10% tithes, 10% to
10% time?
yourself, and then live off the last 80.
Right. I always like to tell people from my world is, if you're making this amount, 10% of that should be put somewhere in a savings account to kind of cover your expenses. People say for 3 months. I say 6. It's kind of hard to do. So, if you're making $50,000, you should be putting away about 5 grand a year. That's the way I look at it. And so how that breaks down for you would be, some people are able to put it away every month. $5,000 a year doesn't seem too much to some people, but then it might seem a lot to a lot of other people. Just that's like putting away 400 plus bucks a month. And for me, savings generally starts with discipline. That's something that's going to be hard for me to teach anyone, and I always say this to all of my clients. Discipline is really with oneself. You got to be, you got to start somewhere, because if you don't start somewhere, you're not going to be able to address all the things that will potentially arise in our lifetime. Everything from like family emergencies to car breaks down, kids get sick. I mean, I can name a whole slew of things that could happen. That's what puts us in peril, because we don't prepare ahead of time for those things. So just a general rule of thumb for me would be to just kind of stash away about 10% of your income every year. Start small. Most people seem like 10% is aggressive. Start with 5. If you're making $50,000 and you can't put away at least $2,500 a year, and that's another conversation we need to have. That's just my opinion on that one.
So for some people, saving isn't easy. Like, that's a foreign concept in general.
Yep. Yep.
And I know you mentioned start small. So
Yep.
what are some like exercises people could maybe do so that they can kind of get into the routine, and after 21 days or a couple of months,
Yep.
they've kind of gotten the rhythm of saving?
Well, to say that, I think it takes about 3 weeks or so to create a habit, something
Mhm.
something on those lines. I kind of equate it to like working out. If you're in the fitness game, like myself, Nate will know more about this too, because he's a fitness junkie like myself. Once you create a habit, it becomes something. Once you start doing something and it creates a habit, it becomes something perpetual. It becomes something that it's like you consistently start to do it. So to answer your question directly, what I would urge people to do would be like, challenge yourself, for about a week. I don't know how often people get paid, or maybe every 2 weeks for most people. Stash away, if you're, I don't know, if you're accustomed to having, I don't know, extra money, like 400 bucks a month extra after you've paid all your bills, whatever that is, put away 100 bucks. See if you can put away 100 bucks out of that 400. And I'm just using this random example for the first 2 months, and see if anything changes in your lifestyle. Because I think what people grapple with is the fact that we're frivolous spenders, to be honest with you. We don't have, if you really think about us, and when I say us, as far as a culture and a group of people, and especially in this age group, we frivolously spend on things that sometimes we really don't need. If you think about it, going out, we eat out 24/7. We see this nice item that we saw on Instagram, and maybe LeBron or Selena Gomez or somebody was rocking something, and you wanted that outfit or something, and we're going to the mall. But it's nice to get those things. I love fashion. I love to look nice, to say a better way. But I like to plan to do those things. That's just me. And it's one thing to act on impulse, and because you certainly see something and you want it, all of a sudden you reach into your bank account or you reach for that debit card and go swipe. That's
Mm.
not discipline. And people, we find ourselves doing these things repeatedly, constantly. And so when you start tapping into that, and that's just one aspect. I mean, you got another aspect, and I speak for my culture of people. We have a tendency in my culture, most of the Africans, is when we go to the grocery store, we just buy a bunch of stuff. When I say we buy a bunch of stuff, we buy a bunch of stuff to the point where, and we have deep freezers stashed in our house. Most African families, I don't know if you guys know this, have deep freezers. Krista is smiling because she knows this.
Mhm.
Um, and I had to caution my wife on this one, because when you go into the deep freezer, the stuff you bought like 2 months ago is still in the bottom of the freezer. You haven't even used it,
Yeah.
but then you're buying more stuff. So, just simple disciplines like that. Because every time I sit with families, individuals, and people, I hear the same thing over and over. I make this amount of money, but I don't see my money. Well, I have a theory. If you're earning that money, it's coming in that household, is going somewhere. We can find it. You just have to be honest with yourself and let me know what you're doing with it, so we can cut in several areas. And again, we can go on and on with people who just spend money at work. Obviously, we're in a virtual environment now because of COVID, but you're just spending money on lunches, or whatever it could be. So discipline for me, Crystal, is key. I would urge people to start small. Whatever you feel you can stash away every month. If it's $200 you end up with every month after you pay your bills, stash away 50 or 100. Try for 2 months and see if anything changes in your life.
And that's a good point you made. A lot of us are, well, some of us aren't going into work, and some of us aren't, buying
Yeah.
those same lunches and probably eating at home. So maybe that money that we would have allotted then for those things like gas and lunch, we can go ahead and put that in savings every
Yeah.
check.
I don't know about you guys. I was looking at my bank statement the other day, or just my bank transactions, because every now and then I would check on it and stuff. Not every night, but every day. I bought gas. We've been home for about 4 months. I've been shut down since the week of March 17th. It was like St. Patrick's Day week. I just remember that week for some odd reason. I've bought gas 3 times in the last 4 months, and I drive, a car that consumes a lot of gas. And I was averaging about close to $100 a week in gas because I'm moving all around. I've bought gas 3 times in the last 4 months. If you see my expense sheet for gas on a yearly basis, I'm spending close to 5 G's. But if I've only bought gas 3 times in 4 months, that money, you can imagine what I've done with that money. So the accountability on my part is, what have I done with that money, that excess money that I have coming back to me? And that's how we have to look at it, because in this environment, a lot of us are not doing the things we were accustomed to doing. So what that would mean, hopefully we have a lot of, good bit of discretionary income put aside, and what we're doing with that discretionary is key.
So I know a lot of people have heard of CDs,
Yep.
and you and I have talked about them actually.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
CDs are not bad. They're just, for those who haven't heard of it, it seems foreign, which I doubt. They're called certificate of deposits. They're instruments, investment instruments that you plug money into, or you just put money into, and it matures at a certain date. That's all. Some of the stipulations with CDs is, when you put your money to a CD, so you can have a 1 year CD, you can have a 2 year CD, a 5 year CD, and so on. But the most typical ones are ones within ranges from 1 to 5 years, and it earns some form of an interest rate. Some of the stipulations with CDs: when you put your money in there, you cannot touch it. That's just how it's, like an ironclad. That's how it's designed. And the interest that it earns, it's not significant. It's not big, but it's better than what you earn in your savings account. Um, and so the average CD, I guess 5 year CD, and don't quote me on this. I think I told you guys on the last call, Yahoo Finance should be your Bible. I've used that from the inception, since the dawn of the internet, in my opinion. But Yahoo Finance is a brilliant place, and you can see all the current rates in the country: CD rates, bank rates, car loan rates, home rates, everything. I think a 5 year CD might run you close to about a percentage point and a quarter, so 1.25, if not less. So again, I mean, if you're putting $100 into a CD, or $5,000 into a CD, or $100,000 into a CD, you clearly can see how much you will earn over that period. So let's just make the math easy. If you put $1,000 there, and you're earning 1%, what's that? $100 or so, if not less. That's all you're earning over a period of 5 years or 3 years, however long that CD is locked in for. And so a lot of people look at it and say, well, geez, that's all I've earned if I put that money in there for that long and I can't even touch it. And oh, by the way, you have to pay taxes on it once it's all said and done. Once it's time to take money back out. Yeah, because it's
I
an
think
investment
that's
instrument.
good information. I never knew you had to pay a tax on that money I put in, because I probably was
Yeah.
taxed when I put it in.
Yeah. So you pay taxes on the gains, on what's earned. Yeah,
Mm.
that's taxable. So it's not a bad thing to do. It's also, for me, I look at it as a stepping stone for people who have done fairly well in putting money away in their savings account, and they want to make that next step to see how comfortable they are with the whole idea of investing and earning a little bit more. A CD would be a nice little route to go, and then there are other options I can discuss offline with anyone who's more interested in things that you can do to see more significant returns.
So, thank you, Nisha, for pointing this out. She said in the chat, and this is very true.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you have the discipline to budget the money up front when you're getting paid, you can go to your job and allocate how you distribute your paycheck. So
Yeah.
you can have some money go straight into a savings account, so you never even see it. It just goes
Yeah.
straight into a savings account and save for you, and that will definitely help you put money aside. Also, online savings accounts. I know my family personally, we do online options as far as a credit union goes, and they actually have a higher APY,
Hmm.
so it earns us a little bit more. So that's the different things you can check out. If you want us to let you know some of the options that we use, we can definitely share that in the chat. Carl had a question, and this
I
is
just wanted to
go ahead.
touch on something real quick, if you don't mind, Crystal.
Mhm.
I think you said Nisha said, was it Nisha that just said
Yeah.
what you repeated? So Nisha is absolutely right. Another theory I always kind of throw by people, and I've worked with some families in the past on this one, is you can go to your HR and kind of redirect some of your money, because people get happy when they get that money in their bank account, they start spending it. So you can allocate, I don't know, pick a percentage point, 3%, 5%, 10%, whatever, into like a direct deposit into like a savings account or even a checking account, and just don't get a debit card for that account. That's the key. Don't take a debit card for that account. Just leave that account sitting right there. You always know it's going to be there. It's going to be your emergency fund. But the fact that people set this up and have a debit card, it makes it very tempting to start spending. It's a good point, Nisha. Just wanted to
Yeah.
highlight that.
And yeah, totally agree. Yeah. So we had a question from Carl. So there are a lot of people who are using the Dave Ramsey approach, and his approach kind of
My
said
man, Dave
like,
Ramsey.
put $1,000, in your emergency fund, and then really aggressively tackle your debt.
Right.
For a lot of people on this call, we live in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, which can be very difficult.
Yep.
So his question is, how should we save while paying down debt? Because Dave Ramsey said we only need $1,000, but you're saying we should really also be saving a lot of money. And you've actually had conversations with me
Yep.
about focusing on having cash.
Yep.
Pay down your
That's
debt.
the
That's
key.
important. It's always going to be there probably for a while, but
Yep.
you definitely should save. So, what are your thoughts and what advice could you give people?
Yeah, I run into the Dave Ramsey question a whole bunch of times. It's always him or Susie Orman in our industry. I don't know why. It's not a bad idea. My theory is, in my world, and I come with about 21 years of experience doing this. I always tell people, and I think I met with Doug recently, and I shared this with Doug, and then I told him this. I don't like people telling people what to do when you don't know their financial situation. That's just the realness. If you tell someone put $1,000 away and then pay down your debt, my question is, do you know what Crystal, Cedric, Doug, or Carl, or Venice, do you understand the financial situation? My belief is, and the way I've done this for several years, is to sit down with people and understand, because every single one of you on this call and listening, your situation is different. Everyone. Now, that doesn't mean that what might work for Crystal may not work, may also not work for Doug or whatnot, but you still have to have a conversation. So my theory would be, in that regard, debt is key. When I sit with families and stuff, the first thing I try to iron out is, let's look at your income, what's coming into the household, everything. Because that's assets. That's your liquid assets, your income. And then let's look at your debt ratio, meaning everything that you have that you're paying on a monthly basis. Once you look at your assets, because this is like simple math, and you ain't got to go to school for this one. So look at your money, how much you're bringing in, look at how much your debt is, and how much you're paying towards your debt. What's left is your discretionary. That's it. That discretionary, in my opinion, is I'm of the belief you have to shed some like 50% of that into something. Because I'm of the belief you can't take all your discretionary income and throw into some investment vehicle. I don't like to do that. And if nothing taught us a real lesson, this 2008 taught me a harsh lesson, because I had things all spread out and I was so spread thin in real estate and investments, and I lost a lot. I pay a hefty price for it. And because we're in a pandemic right now, people are doing fairly well. I mean, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday. I just realized this. There are a lot of people on unemployment making more money in unemployment than they did when they were working, because of the whole $600 buffet. I mean, you got people out here making 4 or 5 G's per month just on unemployment. So I say all of this to say, what you're doing with that money, or how you're addressing your debt in these times, I would say, pay down some of your debt, but there's a strategy to it. And Crystal, I can't go down the weeds with this one, because I've shown you some of the ideas on how you pay down your debt. But you can pay it down every month, or you can pay the minimums every month, and then at a 6-month interval, or let's just say a 3-month interval, you can send them a big check towards like what's called principal reduction. And I know I'm just throwing things out here, and I can talk to you guys individually about how this is done. But it all becomes a strategy that you're doing to really pay down your debt, because it's essential. There's no point in piling up debt and then all of a sudden there you're trying to raise your savings account. So I'm of the belief, try to pay down your debt as fast as you can, depending on your goals, but then also kind of get your savings account growing too. So I don't know if that helps.
Okay, so a lot of us are at the age, and we're in our 30s, approaching 30, mid 30, and I guess I had a call with my advisor as far as like my retirement fund.
Yep.
and he let me know like you're on track, or you should have a little bit more or whatever. Is there a magic number we should have saved by
For
our 30s?
for retirement? Well, you know, yes and no, because things have changed. I mean, put it this way: if I'm talking to people on this call who are in their 20s and 30s, picturing retirement for now, we're talking about 3 decades plus out. Because the retirement age in the U.S. right now, per the federal guidelines, is 65, 66 years of age. So put yourself in those shoes. You all have a long way, including myself, have a long way to get to that part in hindsight. However, it comes by very fast. Um, what we try to tell people is, it goes back to the same rule of saying putting away 10% or whatnot, and stashing away money. I like to look at it and say to people, well, if you've earned this amount of money over a certain period, right? And as you can see, as your income goes up, your lifestyle goes up, because we have a tendency, as we're earning more money, we try to get a bigger house, try to get a bigger car, we're doing stuff, we're traveling more, we're doing all of this stuff. Okay, cool. What most people strive to do by the time they hit that retirement age of 65 and 66 is they want to get the biggest things that they have as far as debt done or eradicated. And the first thing that comes to mind is your home. Is it paid off? The next thing will be, the cars and everything else. And of course, the lifestyle is key. So I try to paint a picture for people to say, well, if your lifestyle means on a yearly basis, you're consuming 50 grand, 50 grand, meaning how much it costs for your mortgage, food, and everything else. So because let's just say you're making 100 grand. If you're making 100 grand, your take home is around 80 something thousand dollars, or $80,000 or so. But let's just say out of that $80,000, $50,000 is really going to your well-being. So that's your lifestyle right there. What do you think that would look like when you get to age 65? And then we can go into the weeds of, okay, is the mortgage paid off, blah, 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 blah. Because then the reality sets into people and say, well, when you get to retirement age, you probably might need $40,000 a year in retirement savings. Well, what that number looks like now at retirement, now we can design strategies for you to get to it. So I guess to answer your question, Crystal, it's kind of yes or no, because it's difficult. The average 50-year-old in the United States of America, take a wild guess how much they have in their 401k. And I'm asking you, Crystal, just throw a number out there. The average 50-year-old. And they're light years away from retirement. They're about 15 years away from retirement. But take a wild guess how much is in their 401k.
I'm going to say less than 500,000.
You'd be blessed. 50 grand. 50 grand. 50,000.
That was my first guess, but I was trying to give somebody like you actually was doing well.
It's 50,000.
Wow.
So you guys think about that for a second. In the investment world, it takes you about 7 years or so to double your investments. That's our rule of thumb. And when I say double your investments, meaning you're in some marketable security, meaning you're in the stock market, you're in mutual funds. So if you put 50 grand into a mutual fund today, the idea is, the rule of thumb is to double that money. To really see significant doubling of that money, it has to be invested with some form of aggression within 7 years. Wow. So let's just take that average 50-year-old who has 50 grand in their retirement account, and let's just give him, he's able to double or triple that money by the time he hits retirement. So he has 150 grand. Well, first and foremost, it's taxable. So, Uncle Sam wants their money because they haven't taxed it. Just so you know. One of the worst mistakes people make is when they see that retirement, they're like, all right, get my money. It's time for me to go enjoy my life. If you take it out as a lump sum, you get hit with like a huge tax penalty. And sometimes it ranges from anywhere between 30 to 35% taxes. Yeah. So imagine pulling out 150,000 and you're getting 30% taken out of that right off the bat. That's 45 grand. So you're down near to almost 100 grand, a little over 100 grand, $105,000. Well, go back to my example and talk about your lifestyle. If your lifestyle was 50,000 per year when you were working in your working years, let's just say you are modest now and you're retired, you got things paid off, but now it's $30,000 a year. Well, how long do you think 100 grand is going to last you in retirement? That is why retirement is a huge component of this country. Is a huge worry for people right now. You find a lot of people who are in retirement still working because they run out of money. So how we plan for that is key. And I hope, I know I went in my little example, but I like to use examples for people to kind of, grasp the concept here. So it's very key, very important. So that amount is it's all dependent on what the lifestyle could be. Sorry, Crystal, go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. I was wondering if you could explain to people like the difference between like a 401k through their job, a IRA, a Roth, like different things like that. Because I know personally,
Yeah,
I have all three, but
yeah,
some people might not have those things, and how should they be, you know, distributing?
yeah, yeah. So a 401k, IRA, I know you get all these things thrown at you. If you work for the state or federal government, you get 403b, TSP, everything else. They're all IRA. Let's start with the IRA, that word, which stands for individual retirement accounts. Anytime you see that word, all it means is Uncle Sam never took taxes out of it. That is all. So under the IRA umbrella, you have what's called 401k if you're with an employer, 403b if you're with the local or federal government, TSPs, all of that fall under that. They're all IRAs. They're just different names based on different employers. That's all they are. And again, always remember, once you're talking about these vehicles, investment vehicles, they are all pre-tax vehicles. They're money that you can put pre-tax money into that to defer it per federal guidelines or IRS guidelines that you're able to touch or access when you get to the age of 59 and a half years old. Um, great tool to have. I always tell all my clients and everyone else, and Crystal and Doug knows about this too. Um, if your company is matching your 401k, you always want to partake. You always. Quick history. I don't know if you guys know the history. Before 401ks became prevalent, and this is a good lesson for you guys on the call based on the age ranges. There was something called pension plans. So pension plans were prevalent leading up into the 80s. Well, what happened is when pension plans became the norm, life expectancy was in the 50s. So what employers started to realize was people started outliving the pension plans. So meaning Teddy will work for a company for over 20 years and boom, he's eligible for a pension. Well, the company is hoping you die. That's what they were going. Because they were going from a life expectancy table stand. Well, people started living longer. Medicine got better. Our eating habits got better. Blah 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 blah. So all of a sudden, these companies realized that they were paying people. They were on the hook to pay a ton of people money, and they were running dry. So they got the lobbyists. They lobbied Congress. Congress got rid of pension plans. Pension plans became obsolete in the 80s. Well, guess what Congress did? They went and created 401k. So 401k now took the burden off the employer and put it on the employee. The only little perk they put in there was we can kind of match it for you. And so it's up to you, the employee, to kind of partake in it if it's a match. But here's the catch. Do up to the match. Do not do more than what they're asking you to do. So if they're saying in order to get the maximum match of 6%, you have to do this, do that. Don't do more. If you're doing more, you're giving them back money because they're getting tax breaks on what they're already putting in there for you. That makes sense?
Yeah, that's good
So
information.
yeah. So again, how much you doing that again, we can discuss it offline. Don't go too crazy. I know a lot of people kind of go to the website and say, well, the guidelines now you can put in $18,500 a year per federal guidelines. You don't have to do all of that. Just do it based on what the company is matching. If your company is not matching your 401k, do not partake in it. Use something else.
And what about a Roth?
A Roth. So a Roth, it's another IRA account that acts the same way, but here's the difference. What goes into a Roth is after tax dollars. So is that after tax money that you've already gotten? So like you already got your pay, taxes were taken out, your IRA or 401k money was taken out, blah blah blah, and you want to set up something in addition. That becomes a Roth. The good thing about Roths are you still get taxed, but you only get taxed on the gains. So what do I mean by that? If you were putting in $1,000 a year in a Roth, and 5 years later you've put in 5 grand, but now your balance is 7 grand, you will only get taxed on the 2 grand. That's just how that works. So it acts the exact same way. You have the same stipulations as to when you can take it out at 59 and a half and whatnot. So, but it's also a good idea to diversify your portfolio.
All right. Well, I think we tackled savings pretty well. We spent about 30 minutes on it. So, if anyone has any other questions about savings, feel free to ask the question, and we will go ahead and answer that for you. I just had a quick question. People asked about debt,
Yeah.
and they asked, is there a difference between good debt and bad debt?
Yeah, there's a huge difference. Just to be blunt, good debt would be your house. You're living in your house, at least you didn't buy it when it was on the water. as people like to say out here. You bought it for a good price in a good market time. Now it's a good time for some reason. My wife is a realtor too, so she's out here showing homes. People are still buying homes, and like I said, I was shocked that people were still out there going to buy homes. But then I thought about it. Unemployment is paying a hefty lot of money right now. That's why Congress is trying to struggle to not pay that, to not extend it. But anyway, um, home debt is a good debt. One of the worst debts we carry in this country is credit card debts. It's a bad debt because of the amount of interest attached to it. You can. There was one time in my life I got one of these department stores credit card, and you know how to tell you purchase now and you get 12 months free financing, and we're like, yes, let's go ahead and get it. Well, I hope and pray that you pay that within that 12 months so you can really take advantage of it, because what happens is in month 13, if you want to look at your balance, so let's just say 12-month free financing on $1,000 purchase, all of a sudden, you were doing the minimum payments, and then by month 13, you looked at your statement, you got $2,000 balance instead of like $1,000 or less, and people freak out. Well, that's what happens. That's tied into it, and all of a sudden now you're on the hook to pay $2,000, and then it becomes a real drag because you're still making the minimum payments, you're still doing it. So a debt that was originally $1,000 kind of could balloon from like 1,000 to like 3,000, and then you find yourself taking 5 or more years to pay that one little card off. That's what makes it very bad. And again, I harken it back to your discipline and understanding what you're doing and understanding how to really be a master of your debt and paying off things.
Um, and that's a good point you made about the store credit cards, because last time we discussed, you said if you're trying to build your credit, a store credit card reports fairly often.
Yes.
And but like you said, you have to be disciplined to make sure you're making the payments, you're not blowing it,
Yeah.
you're not maxing it out. So it can be used as a good tool to increase your credit, but then it also can really hurt you if you're not being smart with it.
Yeah. The way the U.S. Economy is built, with the middle with middle income earners like ourselves here, it's all on credit. There's no way you can go purchase a home today. I mean, at least for me, I don't know about you all, and they tell you it's 300 grand, and you'd be like,
Oh,
yeah, let me write you a check for 300 grand. Like, you know, I had an issue with my car the other day. Well, not the other day, a couple months ago, and I needed a new engine in my car, but I was driving it to the ground. I had like 200,000 miles on it. But long story short, you know, I had to go get a new car. So I walked into a dealership looking for a new car. Well, I was able to put down a down payment, fortunately, but still, I wasn't going to be able to strike a check for all of that. All I'm saying is we have a unique system set up in this country where you are able to walk into a dealership. My mom told me this from the jump. You're able to walk into a dealership with $0 and drive out with a Lamborghini. She always told me that. She's like, but here's the thing: when that payment comes due and you don't pay it, they're gonna send the truck to come and get it. So I say all of this to say you just have to know what your means are in about as far as living within your means, and understand it, and then be very disciplined not to take on too much debt. Credit card debts, we can stop piling it on. You go to one store, you get one car, you go to another store, you get another car. For you realize that you got people, I think they said the average person in this country has about 5 credit cards. 5, with revolving balances anywhere between 20 to 30 grand. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of. I mean, if you think about how long, I was just giving you an example about paying off like a car that belonged to 3 grand, which would take you 5 years. 20 grand would take you a lifetime to pay. It's almost like a student loan just harking behind you. So how disciplined you are in getting these credit cards would be key.
So we have a great question from Nate, and this kind of goes back a little bit to the IRA vehicle,
Yep.
and pretty much he's asking about borrowing money against it, and
Yeah.
how to do it for the right reasons and things like that. And what do you suggest?
Um, the right reasons, there are, I mean, with an employer, there are stipulations in borrowing against your IRA or borrowing from your IRA, which should be your 401k. You're allowed to take it off if you're a first time home buyer. So you're allowed to take out some money from there. That's a great reason to buy to take out money, because if you're getting like a conventional loan, you probably might need to put some money down. You can take money out of your IRA, if need be. You're allowed to. And when I say you're allowed to at no with no penalty. Because if you go into these vehicles before the age of 59 and a half, you get hit with a 10% penalty and taxes. But because you're a first time home buyer, that's waived. Also medical, for medical reasons. If you're in if you have some health challenges, that's really and it's defined different depending on um, which institution you're with. But it's all in fine prints in black and white. So you have to read up on it if you're with your employer, what that means medically. So I don't know, in this COVID environment, I would assume, in fact, federal government even changed up the whole 401k rule. So you're allowed to take up to 100 grand out of your 401k with no 10% penalty. I don't know if you guys knew this.
Wow.
That was instituted since late March. So if I've had clients who've called me up and took money out of the 401k with a 3-year repayment plan. So you have to pay back in 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a
That's
3-year
key. I
repayment
was
plan.
like, I can just get 100K
No, no,
real
no, no,
quick. Just,
no, no, no. There's
just
a three.
run it
There's
up.
oh yeah. There's always a catch with the federal government. You can't be crazy. You got to read it. But again, if you think about it, that was a given. That was a good given for people who wanted to make certain. Because if you're an investor out there looking to purchase a new property and you've built up a pretty good nest egg in your 401k, you got a property that you're looking at, well, pull out that money and go do your investment. Make it smart. Make sure you're doing the smart thing. Location is key when it comes to real estate. And then hopefully you can turn some things around, pay that money back within the 3-year period. Because 3-year period is it's a long time too, to be able to pay it back.
So I guess you should
So
reach out to your whoever's holding your 401k and ask them what the what your interest rate would be, and just kind of manage, like, would this be
so pre-pandemic, you would want to do that. Since we're still within the pandemic and that guideline that I just highlighted to you all is still prevalent, your employer has no discretion now to do anything, because all you simply tell them is, "Hey, I need that money because federal guidelines stipulates that I can take this money out." So they can't do anything to you.
say
They
less?
can't stop you.
We about to flip some money real quick.
Now, don't go in your 401k and clean it out, people. Do not do that. Please do not do that. That is your retirement. If you
Harris,
don't
we
need
about to
to, do
call
not
y'all
touch it.
name. About to
Nope.
flip some stuff.
Nate, I see you, Nate. You are right, brother. You living all right. Don't do it, Nate. But
So
take advantage of some of these things if need be. Take advantage of it.
that's great. So Carl had a follow-up question when it comes to 401ks too, and it was just should you allow your the company that your employer goes through to make your investments for you, should you allow them to
That's a very
set
good question.
your investments, or should you go ahead and decide yourself what you want to invest in?
That's a yes and no, but let me give you a straight up answer. Nobody can tell you where to put your own freaking money. Read the fine print. We in our community. I'm gonna go on a limb saying this, but I'll say it. We in our community, especially as Black and brown folks, we kind of skip over a lot of things that are in fine print. We just don't like to read too much, and that's not good. All of this stuff, all of the information I know, to be honest with you all, I chose to go after it and gain that knowledge. Now I work for the bank, but the bank didn't teach me everything I know. I was inquisitive. I just wanted to know stuff, because I'm looking at the next cat next to me making this amount of money or stashing this amount of bread away. So I want to know how he's doing it. So I'm asking questions and I'm researching stuff. So I say all of this to say, if you're giving what's called the plan document, because every time you sign up for benefits with your company, there's a plan document attached to it. All the funds in that 401k, they're readily accessible to you. You can pick up the phone, you can go right to Yahoo Finance. Every single thing that's in, I don't care which employer that they're offering in that mutual fund bundle in the 401k, you can access that on Yahoo Finance. You can just read about it and be like, how is this fund doing? And all these funds have names. You can just plug it in. Or to make it simpler for you, what the company kind of does for you that's kind of unique to, they give you all the historical performances of these funds. So just look at the ones that have historically done fairly well, and you can kind of mirror that or kind of pair that against your own online research and see it, and then make your allocations, pick the ones that you want. They have a default. Most companies have a default, like you're pointing out, Crystal, that's already there. So a lot of people just kind of go with the default. That's okay too. But my request to you all is kind of review that maybe throughout the year and see how well it's doing and make changes where need be.
That's good. And then before we wrap up kind of debt and savings, someone asked, do you even need to have a credit card? Like, I mean, some people
Yeah,
live without it. Dave Ramsey
yeah,
says you don't need it.
yeah,
Some people like it's a good safety net.
yeah,
It helps you build your credit. Like,
yeah, yeah,
your thoughts?
yeah. The short answer is yes, you do. I mean, because I can sit here and tell you, go be debt free, man. chop up that credit card. Well, unless you got about $1 million sitting in your bank account where, and you're able to pay for a house or a car right off the bat. And if you got kids and they're going to college, because I got a 9-year-old, she be going ready for college in less than 8 years. And you all know how much college costs. I don't have that money stashed in my bank account to just stroke that check. So, I'm saying all of that to say there are challenges that come up in life, and those may be extreme, but just emergencies that you will need money for. So yes, you do need, and the way the system again in this country is built, it's built on a credit system. That's just what it is. If you want to buy, if you're a real estate investors, because I know a few of you on here do real estate investments, you need to do it on credit. I'm sure you're not stroking 200 here for this property, 300 here for this property. If you are, please call me later. I need some money. That's always a good thing. But it's a great system to have, because your credit becomes it's really powerful. How good you keep your credit can take you a lot of places here. You get great interest rates when you go apply for loans. You lenders love you. When you got that low 700 credit, 680 to the 700s and high 700 or 800 credit score, the world is yours. Believe it. And so maintaining that is key. Being very disciplined on how you take on debt. Good debt is key as well. So yes, get a credit card.
So great. So you talk about good debt, and you talked about real estate, and that's where we're going to lead to real estate questions. So some people are getting ready to buy their own home. Some people have already purchased the home. So what are the pros and cons from your seat when it comes to purchasing your home?
Maybe should I pick on somebody here to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. Tag in.
Yeah, because I hate to be the person talking. I like to. I don't have all the ideas here, and I can answer that question, but I want Doug to speak to this a little bit more. One of the things I would say is location is key, but Doug does really phenomenal when it comes to real estate. Nate too does some stuff too, so I would really want to hear his opinion on that. But Doug, I want you to take the floor and kind of answer that and share some good thoughts on that for people.
Yeah, I could take it. With real estate or purchasing your own home, there's many pros and cons, but I'll highlight a few of them. Just starting with cons first. When purchasing your own home, you are responsible for all the maintenance, all the repairs, cutting the grass, keeping up with the outside maintenance inside. If something happens in your home, such for example, in my home, we had a water issue where water came down and flooded all 3 levels of my home. We were responsible for that, like paying the deductible so the insurance company can come in. So while it's good to purchase your home, there are many programs, first-time home buyers, VA home loans if you're in the military, that you can do to take advantage of purchasing your home at a cheap price. It is also equally important to have a savings account, emergency fund for that reason. I would recommend whatever your deductible is with your insurance company, make sure you have that in a savings account because you may need it. Some of the pros that I've seen with purchasing my home, just the home that I live in, is I'm able to have, I can write off different, I have different tax breaks. We're all working from home right now. You can write that off as a home office and save money there. So there's plenty of other pros and cons to purchasing your home, especially your first home. I'll pass it to Nate and see if he could take over and see if he has any other pros and cons.
Yeah, and Nate, I want you to touch on the fact of just purchasing your home, but then wanting to purchase another home or multiple homes as an investment. I want you to tap on that on what discretion you use on that.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to I became a homeowner at 22, and at 37, I've gotten a lot of pros, and I've also experienced a lot of cons,
Yep.
and cons literally. And one of the things that I would say that I would advise anyone is, if you're looking into a home, think about your plan. Like, I think a lot of times people don't plan. They get a good idea and they go with the idea, but everything has to be strategic. So where is it that you want to live in the next 3 to 5 years? Is this a place that, if you don't live in the property, that it would be very rentable should you decide to keep it? If the market turned and you weren't able to sell it at cost, would you be able to make that mortgage should you rent it out as well? Because what I saw, especially, prior to the crash in 2008, was that people were buying and buying and buying, but at the end of the day, they couldn't rent out their investments to get their return. So at the end of the day, it ended up becoming a liability. And that's where people ended up, walking away. They were underwater, and every asset can turn into a liability. So you got to make sure that when you're making the purchase, you have a strategic plan, and then you have a plan B to go along with that. So in my experience, I've been able to do a little bit of a lot. I've been able to do like enter the Airbnb market with property. I've rented rooms. I've rented properties as a whole, and then I've also sold properties as well. And so, like knowing the market, I think you're absolutely spot on. Knowing the market, studying interest rates. If there's ever a point in time that you should refinance, making sure that you're refinancing, you actually look to make sure that it's a long-term gain in the refinance and not a short-term come up. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things around real estate that I think is worth mentioning, but in terms of finances as a whole, make sure you're ready. Make sure you got it, because what you don't want to do is end up making a purchase and then 3 to 6 months in not feel like that you can even keep up with what it is that you have. So I would just kind of add that on, be strategic. And so apply that. And let me just say this part and then I'm off. Be strategic in your money, and real estate is just a part of it. So something that I always tell, like even like in my profession and where I work, I always say, what is your strategy? What is your strategy in real estate? What is your strategy in your 401k and your investments? What is your strategy in terms of your savings? What is your strategy in terms of your tithing as well? So if you have a strategic approach and you know where every one of your dollars is going, you automatically know when you get paid on X date, this is where everything is going. When you get paid on Y date, this is where everything is going. And even if something happens with, like, a car breaks down, or, something floods in the house, then based on your strategy exactly where you go back to. And I pull from savings, I pull from here, I pull from here in the event of. So I would just offer, be strategic with your money in every facet, and then your money will work for you.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
And I wanted to just kind of add to it real quick, Crystal, if you don't mind. He said something, and I'll full disclosure. Crystal knows me here, and I think Doug is learning that about me. I like to be full disclosure with people. I paid a hefty price in 2006. I was one of those people who wasn't disciplined entering into the real estate market. I did not do my due diligence. Matter of fact, let me just put it out there for all the real estate gurus on here. I purchased my home I signed my contract for my home in North Carolina in November of 2006. Well, if all the guys on here know what was happening by 2006, the market was already on the downward spiral. So I did not do my due diligence. So talking about underwater, I pay a hefty price and was stuck with that property for a while in trying to offload it. So he's right. Location is key. Make sure you're ready. Understand your expenses and what your money go in. And Doug touched on that. Just because these things will happen, even though you have an investment property and you're all psyched about it and you're all happy. But what happens if that renter calls you and tells you there's a leak? It's a big time leak. What's going on? And I don't know about y'all. If a pipe bursts in the house, them stuff can run you a couple of grand. So how you plan for stuff like that is key. Go ahead,
That's
Crystal.
great. That's great stuff. And I have one more question about home ownership and real estate before we move on to life insurance and estate planning.
Okay.
So one of the questions is, what do you see the long-term effects of COVID-19 will have on the housing market?
Oof. I wish I knew. If I know what COVID is doing, then y'all should anoint me right now. I have no idea. This is not something in my 21 years of work history that I was ever taught for, planned for, knew that it was going to happen. No one foresaw this coming. I don't know. This is new. Someone said something on a program I was watching yesterday. Says we have two problems coming. One of them potentially could be solved, but we have another problem. He says we're gonna have a vaccine problem and we have a vaccination problem. And so when you got to listen to what he just said, that person said, and I had to listen to it. Well, the vaccine is they're trying to get the vaccine. Well, they're trying to speed up the vaccine to have the vaccine in about a couple of months. Normally, vaccines take like 2 years and then go to a trial period. But yes, the vaccination problem. Will any one of you be comfortable to put yourself in there to go get your arm stuck or get your kids in there? That's a vaccination problem. So you can have the vaccine, but then you got people who need to be willing to go do it. So I'm still on the fence about that. Especially, I was telling, was it you, Chris? I was talking to yesterday. I said, I'll wait and see the first batch of people. If they go take it and they don't turn to zombies, and then I'll start thinking about it. But I'm not trying to scare anybody, or I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, which by any means I'm not. But it's thought provoking. All of us who have kids now, we are grappling with the fact of sending our kids to school. Matter of fact, most of our kids are all virtual now. My kids are staying home; they'll virtually be taught. So the long-term effects of these things, I don't know how long it's going to be around. I think it's going to be around for, some people are saying about a year.
Yeah.
I think a year and more. I think it's here to stay. Hopefully the vaccine does what it needs to do and people kind of quell their fears and heed to it, because when we go back into history, when the flu pandemic happened, it killed about 100 million people plus, and that was in the 20s. And so, knock on wood, hopefully we don't have that kind of a tragedy as a number, but they came up with the flu vaccine, and that's why we were all moving around doing what we're doing now. So hopefully that happens. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like for our markets, to be honest with you. I don't know.
So I've also heard from people like this is a great time for finance as well, though.
Yeah,
I know for me personally, I'm able to refinance for a lower mortgage payment, and
absolutely.
someone also told me this is a great time to invest. So, what are some positive things or some advantages of COVID-19 right now that people can do and they should consider looking into?
Well, one of the first things I started telling my clients, and I think I told you this, Crystal, back in early April. I'm a news junkie, so I follow all the news. In addition to the 401k thing I told you guys that was there, if you own a home, you can have a moratorium placed on your mortgage. And if anyone don't know what that means, is you can have your mortgage frozen. They can freeze your payment. Matter of fact, they did it for the first 3 months. They just extended it for another 3 months. So you get 6 months of not paying a mortgage. 6
Well,
months.
do you have to show that you're not working at that time, or can you just?
No. It's a stipulation, but this was all part of the whole thing, the package the federal government put together, the whole stimulus thing. You are allowed to. You can pick up the phone when you hang out right now and call your mortgage company and tell them, I'm not able to pay my mortgage right now because of COVID. I don't have enough income. They're not very. In fact, matter of fact, most of them, you don't even have to talk to them. I don't know about you. When you log on to your lending stuff, it has the whole COVID thing right on the top. You can just click to answer 2 questions. Boom, you don't have to pay your mortgage. Now, here's where my advice comes into play. You'll still have to pay that money at some point. But here's what's key. You can also opt to refinance when the time comes, because here's what's going to happen. It's going to be hard for the mortgage companies to come back and tell you all of a sudden, well, let's just say if your mortgage is $1,000 and you took the 6 months moratorium, you owe us $6,000, so you got to give us $6,000 up front. They're not going to do that. They might have a program attached to you for you to repay that back, or they might just say, you know what, let's just refinance this whole bad boy and get you a new payment and get you things started. Or they can throw those 6 months worth of payment to the back end of your mortgage. There's several ways they can flip it around. Why wouldn't you want to take advantage of it? Again, if your mortgage is $1,000 and you're able to get 6 months freeze on your mortgage, you just put $6,000 back in your bank account.
Yeah.
What are you doing
Saving
with that
or
money? And that's
investing.
why I'm saying we're in a perfect time to put a lot of money away.
That's great advice. I'm
So
actually kind of mad at some of y'all who didn't tell me this.
you got to just listen to the news, Crystal.
I ain't gonna say nothing. Okay.
Yeah, I know you were. No, but yeah, there's several programs out there, and I saw Doug shaking his head because I'm sure he knows about it. I'm sure Nate does too. Credit card companies, I think rental companies too are doing the same thing. They were allowing you to freeze some of your rent too because of some of the stuff, depending on the state you live in. And Doug, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mario Bowser in DC was allowing some of these rental companies not to go after people.
But that's
For their
true.
rent.
They've put our student loans in forbearance right now.
There you go.
We
I
have
forgot
the
about
money
that
to
too.
pay it.
Yeah.
But if you're not charging me interest right now, I'm going to go ahead and use that money to either save or pay on something else to pay it down. And when you need the money again, I'll go ahead and pay it. But that's extra money that, like you said, I don't have to pay right now, and you're not penalizing me for it.
Not only that, you're not penalized or getting interest charged, you're not getting your credit stuff reported to the credit bureau. Think about that. So it doesn't affect your credit.
All right. So before we go, and I wanted to introduce my sister, Venice. She resides in Missouri, and she was going to talk to us a little bit about what it's like to get life insurance and estate planning because she has her own story to share. So go ahead.
Can I jump in, Vinny? Sorry, I'm not even going to take your shine because I asked you to be on this one. So, and there was a reason why I asked you. And I want you to go as deep as you want. Guys, there's a reason why Venice is on here. This is Crystal's sister. If you all didn't know, I managed Crystal and her husband, her whole family, and Crystal referred me her sister. If you guys remember on the last call, I told you about the Kobe Bryant story, and apparently that hit home because that hit home for me. Venice had something very similar, so I'm not going to take away from it, but I'm going to only put this in there. There was a time that I placed a call to her to get some things done. They didn't blow me off, she and her husband. They just simply said, Teddy, we'll get back to it. And then I'll let her take the floor from here. Hi, Venice.
Hey, Teddy. Hey, Crystal. Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am a mother of three. I was married to my husband for 14, 15 years. We spoke to Teddy. It was probably what,
17, I think. Was it
yeah,
17?
17. So I talked to my husband. I said, we probably should, get with Teddy to get this going, savings and life insurance and whatnot. And my husband just said, okay, we'll talk to him. We just kind of get some things in order. So 2018, actually it was November, my husband got sick. He thought it was, he had some other medical history before I had met him. And he thought it was the same thing. So he went to the emergency room. Come to find out, his blood sugar was extremely high and they admitted him. And 2 days later, he passed away. And that was November 2018. And I had to call Teddy because I had no idea what I was going to do, had no idea where to start. I had, of course, planning a funeral. I have a house. I have cars. I didn't know. I was just dumbfounded. I was at a loss. My husband had life insurance, but unbeknownst to me, the insurance was in my children's name. So I'm still at a loss. How do I get to pay things? Sure, I was working. I had my own life insurance. But my husband passed away. He was head of the household. He had everything. He did everything. So it was an eye opener to me that you can't really rely on someone else to do everything for you. You've got to know for yourself. You can't. Yes, you want to trust them and things will happen, but you have to have that communication between you and your spouse on, well, what happens to you? Where will things go? What will happen? Where is money coming from? How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to pay for this house? Are we going to stay here? So I'm blessed that my sister, as she would say, annoyed me enough to talk to Teddy, and he's been my saving grace.
Yeah, but and the reason why I asked Venice to be here because this is a classic example of real life situation. I remember it like yesterday. I remember those 2 phone calls. I remember the phone call because he was her husband was in the back, and I heard her tell him this. He's like, yeah, just tell Teddy we'll get back to him. Now, for a few of you who know me, I'm not a pushy guy because I could have called them, and I fault myself because I should have called them. This was in 2017, probably the latter part of 2017. This man passed a year later. And I remember when this woman called me, she was so out of it. I don't even, it's amazing to look at her right now. It's just amazing to see how far she's come because she didn't even know where to start. I remember I even sent you a checklist. There's a whole burial checklist thing, right? We had gone through it to see how to be able to locate stuff. Long story short, my simple message to you guys for today's call is just act. Act now because tomorrow is not promised. I mean, I'm sure she never even saw it coming. I never saw it coming. Crystal, nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw Kobe Bryant. If anyone had told us Kobe Bryant would be a dead man by now, if they were telling us this last year, all of you would have said, including myself, get out of here. What are you talking about? But he's gone. And so is her husband. He's gone. And so one of the things, going back to everything that I'm gonna harken this back, is for us to just act. We as a community, we need to act, because nothing is promised. COVID is decimating our community. If you guys don't know it, it's on the news. The Black and brown community is getting decimated by COVID. Now we can go through a slew of reasons why that is the case: poverty, whatever else, gerrymandering, and whatnot. But it's still killing us. And one of the reasons is, imagine if it's taking care, if it's taking away head of households, like in Venice's case. What's the kids' college gets put in peril. The mortgage company might tell you, you know what, sorry for your loss, but we need that payment next month. And there's a whole bunch of things that would happen and would just turn your life upside down. So just act.
And so how do we start? Like, what should we do? What, when you say act, like what's step one?
Well, step one is just to talk to a financial advisor. It doesn't have to be me. I can do it all. Go to your local bank or talk to your family members. I'm sure, there are family members here. I would love for you to talk to me. I'm not saying by all means don't reach out to me. In my capacity now, I manage a lot of advisors. So I have people on my team that I can designate, and I'll oversee all of these calls or strategies with you all. But just reach out to somebody and just talk to them and just have conversations and be like, hey, look, here's my situation. Here's what my lifestyle looks like. What do you think I have missing? And my job is always to fill in the gaps for you. If something is working for you, and I've told a bunch of you on this call already, I do not change it. I don't like changing people's stuff. If it's working, I leave it. If something is not working or you're missing something, I fill in that gap. So just act.
So that's great. So I know Cedric and I started, even as simple as writing our will,
Yeah.
But can you explain, like, some people have children, some people don't have children, but the importance of doing that and just where to start with that?
I'm almost let Venice talk about this, because Venice had to go to a court. There was a time, right, Venice, you were, I think her camera is probably frozen, where she had to go through like a probate session. Venice, but just the idea, before I let Venice chip in here, having a will is key. If you don't have a will to stipulate how you want things outlined, if you're not here, a will is you speaking from the grave. That's how we say it in our industry. It's you talking from the grave. If there's not a will pull in place to be able to decipher or to shed out your assets and life insurance and everything else, the courts decided. And Venice can speak to that because she had to go through that too. I remember we were trying to figure out what jurisdiction. I think I was trying to figure out your jurisdiction before you could go and get to the court. So yeah.
I actually haven't had to do that yet, but it's still in the back of my mind that I will probably have to, because a lot of the assets that my husband had was in his name. So it's still a possibility that I'll have to do that. Prayerfully, I don't, but
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to have things in their name alone, but just remember, if it's both of you, you both will be liable for it.
Yeah. And I've told family members, even my own family, I said, one of the things we had to think about, we have two girls, my wife and I, and what if she and I never came home? Where would my kids go? And we had to think about it. She looked at me, she's like, oh, you're right. Well, they'll go to my sister, or they'll go to this person. And you have families talking about, no, I don't want them to go to there. I don't want them to go to that person. But let me tell you guys, if there's not a will put in place to kind of stipulate stuff like that, the courts decide that for you. The courts. And it's a mess, especially if you guys have done fairly well for yourself. That's why you start seeing family members popping out of the woodwork talking about they were your distant cousin, your distant relative, because they want some of that piece of the pot. It's crazy.
And Nate, what were you saying? What's a parent plan? Nate, Nate,
I think he probably will come back in.
okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No
Hey, you all kind of talked on it anyway. Basically, what's your plan of action should something happen to both parents at the same time? And so you kind of talked about that. And then also there is the option of having a trust in place. And so stipulating and getting with an advisor to stipulate exactly how you would want a trust to be structured, because a trust can also take care of what occurs when it comes to your estate planning, your children, as well as the assets and how things are farmed out. So I just think it's important it goes back to what I was saying before, strategy. And so how do you have strategy over your money and your assets? And your children are your greatest assets. So strategize it from while you're here and while you're in the grave.
And so Nate brings up a huge point about a good point about trust. Let me just kind of touch on that, Crystal, if you don't
Yeah.
mind, quickly. Trust acts in the form of, especially when it comes to kids, it's very important to have stuff like that put in place. Two parents are not here; they're no longer around. The kids are minors. The trust kind of sets up in a way. There's two kinds of trust: revocable, irrevocable, for minors and whatnot. But it acts in a such of in a way where until the kids or the kid gets to an age of an adult or 21 plus, there it stipulates how the money is going to be given to the kid, and who controls that money. It's key too, because imagine, two parents are not here and there's $1 million worth of money left for the kid with no trust, and they give it to Aunt Betty or they give it to Uncle Raymond. Yeah, you think Uncle Raymond is just going to be sitting there trying to just make sure that kid? Now granted, we have some great family members, I'm sure, that would just sit there and make sure little Teddy is taken care of. But then you also have Uncle Raymond and Betty who got their own needs too, and they got $1 million sitting in their coffers that they have full discretion over.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to tell you more what happens in those cases, and there's a ton of things that happen. So good point, Nate.
So that's great. So definitely the takeaway from that is, sit down with someone, start preparing for the afterlife. I mean, tomorrow's not promised.
And thank you, Venice. Thank you for being here. Thank you very
yes.
much.
And we just want to make sure that you start now. Like my sister said, I annoy her all the time with my finance talk about preparing for her kids and her family, and just making sure we're all taken care of. I do annoy Teddy too.
She calls me all the time.
So my husband actually had this question, and we've had this talk since we've met. Our funeral is a waste of money. He does not believe he wants a funeral. He said, in his words, burn me up and sprinkle me over in the beach and eat some tacos. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I was just throwing a little bit of humor here, but it's a true humor. If you do burial anything like my African people, trust me, that's an event. I mean, the typical Ghanaian funeral runs you close to 2 months. I ain't making this up. I'm not making this up. I hear somebody talking in the background. Did I call out my people? But anyway, to each its own. If someone wants to honor their dead relative, who am I to tell them what to do? I'm like Cedric, to be honest with you. Why waste that money on ceremony and all of that kind of stuff? Cremate me, throw my ashes somewhere, or you can put in an urn or whatever it is that you need to do. Just be considerate of what you're doing. There's no need to be spending $30,000 on a funeral. I think the average funeral cost runs you anywhere between 12 to 14 grand. That's still great because the funeral home alone is taking a huge chunk of that money, and getting the caskets and whatever else and the little ceremony going. But that seems more reasonable to me than you going more extravagant. And like I said, in our culture, in most of the African cultures, I mean, funeral becomes an event. Like the Ghanaian culture, we always make fun of them. They extend funeral for months. I'm not kidding you. And they're moving the body from here to here. I'm like, dude, I think that person is already telling you, dude, put me in the ground. I'm good. You know what I mean? So each his own. I don't want to be the person to tell someone how to celebrate their loved one who they've lost and they love and they're missed. So I would never put myself in that position.
Yes, Nate. I looked up cremation last night. It's definitely a cheaper way to go. So someone had a question for you. Prenups.
Oh boy, yeah, you're going down the rabbit hole now. Okay, you're going down the rabbit hole now. Okay.
Talk about it. I got married. We didn't really have anything, so it wasn't nothing to prenup. Like we both broke. You want my 2 pennies? Because I'm gonna take your 2 pennies. Like, I mean, but some people are getting married a little bit later and they have assets already.
Right.
So what's your suggestion?
Well, I always told my wife, I say, if you want to come after me for anything, you're going to got to go after my goats and my sheep back home. I got all my stuff in my goats and sheep back home. You know how we do. It's a touchy subject, so I'm going to just give it to you rugged and raw. If you're a person who's well established, you got to protect your assets. See, love is all sweet until it gets nasty.
Yeah.
And until someone does something, silly. And then, people, we all do it, in just your own relationship. Your spouse says something bad, you want to say something even worse to hurt their feelings, or you want to go after them. Some people go after them even harder. I'm one of those people in the past and whatnot. But these things get really dirty, especially when you have kids involved and people start coming after assets and going after things. And so to look at something you've worked for, put all your blood, sweat, and tears in for so many years, and you've built this monstrosity of an asset thing or whatever you got going on, and just to have it split. I mean, look at some of the divorces out here. Some of these guys are pay a hefty penny. Just you've been married to somebody for a year and change. I think in the state of Virginia, by the way, you don't even have to be married. If you and the person lived under the same roof for 7 years, I believe any one of you, it becomes a common law thing. And if you're separate, you can pay them what's it called, alimony. You're supposed to pay them alimony in the state of Virginia. And you don't have to be married. You're just lived under the same roof. So educate yourself on it. I feel if you find yourself in that position where you think you have a lot going for yourself, but you met this lovely person and you're all happy and in love, just have the conversation. I'm of the belief if somebody is opposed to doing it, let's just say I'm married, I met my wife and she's this wealthy person from Africa, and she's like, you know what? Yeah, you're good and everything, but you need to sign right here because you're not touching my dad's wealth. And if I'm opposed to it too, then she has the right to really ask my intentions, though, because I think love is love. You should be all about the person. That's just me. So it's a dicey situation because people's like, well, no, I need to be taken care of too. All right. Protect your assets. Don't let things that you work for just go down the drain, because that's the easiest way it can go. I mean, you walk into a lawyer office and they're telling you, well, you got to split that sucker either 60-40 or 50-50. You'd be lucky 50-50. Sometimes the person on the other end, they get more, depending on the lifestyle. They get more.
Yeah, and because this is for Zion Church, I have to give the caveat that we don't necessarily believe in divorce.
But things happen.
That's not on the table. We're not even allowed to say the D word. However, as always, you should be educated on all fronts.
Well, it's finance. It's part of your finance, and we do a lot of that planning in strategies. And by the way, that's why you see a lot of people use insurance products. I don't know if I should say it here, but when you throw your money in insurance products, you're free from divorces. When your divorce cannot touch it. Yep, I said it.
So I'm going to open the floor up for questions. But before that, Teddy, is there anything that you can mention about your products at all on this call, or should people just set up a call with you individually?
Yeah, I mean, look, we do financial planning. I'm in the business of financial planning. So we have an array. We're almost like a one-stop shop. So if you want life insurance, mutual fund investments, kids' college plans, estate plans, long-term care, something we'd never even touch on too, because that's a huge component of planning right now, especially in this country with a lot of people needing some form of care. That's what we do. And so without getting into the weeds of the exact product, because I hate talking about products with people, because everyone's situation is different. I like talking about solutions and services that we provide. So that's our services in a nutshell. And so if you need, I feel like everyone on here should be able to have a conversation with me or with some form of financial advisor. Everyone. I don't care if you need something or not. Just have a conversation and see where you're at, see how well you're doing. And if you're doing well, don't change anything. If you're not doing well, try to do something about it. And so reach out to me. My information, Crystal has it. Feel
if
free,
you don't
Crystal.
mind sharing in the chat before we leave to the best contact information. I don't want to overshare your contact.
Okay. I'll put it there once I pass the floor to someone else quickly. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me. And to be honest with you guys, kind of talk to some of these guys on here. Talk to Doug. Talk to Crystal. Talk to Nate. I'm throwing our names out here. I work with some of these guys out here, but what they don't know too, I feed off of them. I don't know it all. And a guy like Doug who does a lot of real estate stuff, if I want to do some real estate investments, I don't want to make the mistakes I made back in 2006. I'm calling him. Talk to them, use their expertise, tap into them. It's just people right around us who are doing very well for themselves or who are making some really good decisions. And sometimes you just want a second thought on that. So utilize them.
All right. Well, any other questions in any of the chats, or does someone want to unmute themselves and ask a question? The floor is yours. We have about 13 minutes. So I don't like to hold people hostage.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, but any other question? There's a lot of chats going on. I didn't even notice. Okay. But yeah, anyone can feel free to kind of chime in. I'm here for the next 13 or so.
Well, I do have to make mention that our very own Pastor Battle is getting ready to start a finance topic.
Yeah.
It starts next Sunday, not tomorrow, but next Sunday, called Cash Apps. And he's going to discuss things like the Black Wall Street and the mindset that they had to build that community.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that you definitely want to check out starting next Sunday. We have service starting at 10 a.m. You can find it on our website, or you can find us live on Facebook. Teddy, we had a quick question.
Sure.
To talk about, and I've actually watched the episode of Dirty Money about guardianship and like long-term care, and it just broke my heart.
Yeah.
How people can just, if you're alone and you're older, people can take you for everything you have. Yeah. So I guess what's some things you can put in place to make sure that doesn't happen to you. And if you haven't watched that episode of Dirty Money when it comes to guardianship, I suggest you go check it out.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say it. Now I'll go back to the Obama administration. The industry changed. Our industry, the financial service industry, changed a lot during the Obama years. And of course, coming from the 2008 financial crisis, there was a lot of ironclad policies put in place to kind of protect seniors, like you're pointing out. So when it comes to stuff like that, even in our industry, let's just say we were talking to somebody who needs some form of a long-term care plan. More than likely, to be honest with you, if the person is an elder person needing plan, they almost always have their kid with them or some form of a guardian with them. But then we kind of dig deeper. So there are a lot of processes we have in place based on what the federal guidelines put in place to kind of screen that person. Because believe it or not, the people in that same series that you're talking, and I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it, and I can guarantee you the people who really do the worst to some of these seniors are their own family members, are their own kids, believe it or not. You will have situations where there's a plan set up and there's a bunch of assets growing here. Let me just be blunt. There's a bunch of money sitting in this plan, and this person requires some form of care. And maybe that plan is spitting out about $6,000 a month. All of a sudden, you start to look months down, the plan is spitting out $10,000 a month. That $4,000 starts to go to that person's kid. And there's so many different reasons why that will come out, because they feel like they have full discretion. They've built a rapport with the advisor. So the advisor is not kind of keeping his antennas up. But there's a lot of things put in place now to be able to protect that senior, because a plan that should have probably covered that senior for a lengthy time, you start to seeing people running out of money in an early stage. And then when you go and look back and dig deeper, the kid used the money. So there's a lot of things being put in place for that. Again, from the Obama administration that we have to follow now. So they've clamped down hard on the way on what we do with clients. And I'm of the mindset, I tell all my guys that work for me, do what someone tells you they want. Do it. Do not give someone something that's not within their plan or within their financial means. So
good. And Nate had a quick question.
Yep.
Yeah, Teddy, from a planning perspective, I kind of want to dive a little deeper.
Yep.
On that particular topic.
Yep.
So I often know that when I'm in the position where I have older parents,
mm-hmm.
and then I have children. So you mm-hmm. sometimes are parenting both generations, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about, from your experience, what you've seen when you might have somebody who has like they retired and they had the house paid off and they've done those things, but when they've gotten sick, there is the requirement of, like they might need nursing care or long-term care or things like that. And often what happens in our communities is we're robbed of like our real estate and things like that, because the government comes in and you kind of have to like seize those assets before you can get any type of like Medicare or any type of assistance. Yeah. What strategies do you recommend to put in place to ensure that there is a long-term care plan in place and that those assets don't get taken and protected? Yes.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. let me give you a little quick story, and that's a deep one, Nate. But let me give you a quick story, and I'm sure my wife wouldn't mind. Crystal knows this story. I think I told Venice this before, whomever. My father-in-law died from cancer 2 years ago, 2018. This is BC's dad. He was battling it for about 4 years. Didn't have long-term care in place. Cost the family a hefty thing. I mean, when he passed, we had about probably close to a little over 100 grand in medical expenses to pay for. That becomes a huge burden on families. I always like to point this story out because imagine your spouse coming to you and telling you their dad or mom or some family member who they love caring about, or who probably read them, or they grew up under, needs some form of care, or needs this care because their health is in jeopardy, and you need to take some money out of your coffers to be able to fund that. That's a very hard conversation depending on who's on the other side of the table. And I point this out because those things break marriages, they break relationships if the other person is not really receptive. And really sometimes too, when I'm talking to clients about this, you really can't blame the other person, because the other person who really needs you to come on board with them to help out this family member is looking for your support. But then the other person is like, well, we don't really have that money. What do you want us to give an extra $1,000 a month or $500 a month? Where the hell are we taking that money from? I'm so sorry, I'm on the church stuff, right? But where are we taking this money from? And so to Nate's point, planning for that is key. There's a lot of products if I should get into the product aspect in our long-term care suite of products that we have that does all of that protection for the client. Because what happens now, Nate is right, when you're in your 40s like myself, you start to see your parents age, and they move different. Things start to do different things. Today is my dad's birthday, and my dad is 78 years old today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. The person that I knew 20 years ago is not the same person right now. And I can almost tell you within 5 years, that's just my own estimation, knock on wood, maybe it will even be better. He may not even be moving around the same way anymore. He's slower, he argues more now for like crazy stuff. Like they just stuff like it will irritate people in the beginning, but now it's like, that's just pops. He's older now. They start to get to that point, and I had to have this conversation with my little brother because we're only two for our parents years ago, because I foresaw this coming. Yeah, I work in the industry, so I know it. And I said, we need to start planning for what would happen down the road, because what would happen is, let's just say Pops, God bless us with another 10 years of his life, and he's 88 and he needs some form of care. Well, imagine how burdening and taxing that would be for me to leave my job or my home to go care for him. I will be able to, but I won't be able to do it all the time. And that's where it becomes very critical in having someone else caring for him, but you footing that bill. And footing that bill, because just caring for an elderly person in the state of Virginia, do you know how much it costs yearly? Crystal, throw a number out to me. Just caring for somebody who needs some form of care, how much do you think it costs yearly?
I can't even imagine, because you got to pay the nurse's salary, essentially.
$98,000. 98 grand for anyone who needs form of care. And this is regardless if they're in a facility or they're doing the in-home care. That's how much it costs. That's why these nurses make a lot of money. Imagine the people in the COVID environment right now, how much money they're making. Like just think about that. So Nate is absolutely right, because what the government does is, when people start applying for like Medicare, Medicaid, the stipulations with those things are, in order to qualify for that, when the need comes, you need to be dirt poor. So your assets need to be reduced. And when I say reduce to like 2 grand. So what you start seeing people doing is they start transferring money and stuff to their kids at that point to kind of, fool the system. But the system is not stupid, because they kind of ask you for your bank records, and they kind of see when the money is moved, or they kind of ask you for your title on your home, and they kind of see when you transfer title, stuff like that. So if the government realizes that you're not within the position that you were in, or you kind of fool them in a way, they seize your property. They come back and start taking stuff away from you. That's just how they operate. A lot of people will tell you in the past that, if I get sick, I'll use Medicaid and stuff. No, there's a reason. There's stipulations. There are ways you have to qualify for it, and there's a qualification period for it. In order to qualify for it, your assets have to be. You got to be dirt poor, and so now it's important in paying. I always tell people, and I just told you their number, which is 98 grand a year. Would you rather pay $200 a month, a couple of $100 a month, for something that's going to create a whole pool of money when the time comes, versus when the time comes and you're stroking 6 G's a month or $8,000 a month. One of my father-in-law pills that he was taking for his cancer was $8,000. One pill.
How
One
much?
pill.
One pill.
$8,000. One pill. If you've ever had somebody that has cancer, yes. One pill. And he needed like 15 of them. Yeah.
Wow. So that's a good conversation to start having with our parents then.
Oh yeah. And you know, long-term care is a really great conversation because the way I set it off when I do those workshops is when you start asking questions, the first question I ask everybody in the workshop when they come up, I'm like, all right, everyone in this room, including the young ones, including us, will need some form of care. You start to see the young people looking at the parents like, well, I don't know about me. I brought my mom or my dad. Well, you would need it too, sir or ma'am. And then the next question I ask is, when you do need the care, who's going to be responsible for you? That question always puts people back against the wall because we really don't know. You know, your parents, most of the parents, especially the old age parents, like our old school parents, they're like, all right, you know, y'all take care of me and kind of thing, and especially in the African household. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of us now, we're all blended up with marriages and kids and stuff. So imagine you bringing your parents in your home, in your marriage, to be cared for.
Mm-hmm.
So planning is key for that.
Wow, that's great. That's really having really great stuff. Well, we're about 2 minutes shy of 12.
I was going to say, Crystal, Nate, does that answer your question? Hopefully that does. I don't know if I went too deep.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, and I think it's important for people to hear that level of specificity, because at the end of the day, we see parents aging, and God forbid something happens to your parent, and while you would lose them is, you know, a challenge, and it's something that you have to deal with. That financial implication is on top of losing a parent is a problem. So I think it's important to, you know, really have that conversation. So thank you for that, Teddy.
Yeah, and in our world, if for most of you who don't know, I'm with New York Life. We're a life insurance company. We're the largest one in the country. That little logo you see on top of my head, I have a green screen, y'all. So I'm not sitting on top of no building. But that represents $50 billion that we've infused into the Black community over a period of 6 years. So we celebrated that in 2018.
Wow.
We went on a 6-year trajectory with all the Black advisors within New York Life, infusing financial planning to the Black community through life insurance, mutual fund investments, and everything. When we total everything, we're looking at $50 billion, and we hit that mark. But I say this to all of you all: it's just key. Just act. Sit down with someone, have these conversations with people. Don't be afraid. I mean, these conversations are hard. I mean, I can assure you, if Venice had to do this thing over again, she would look at her husband again and tell him, "Let's talk to Teddy right now. Right now. Just act."
Well, sis, that means I can just move on from bugging you to bugging mom. So that works out.
Oh boy.
There you go. Have at it.
But yeah, Teddy, I really want to thank you so much for, you know, coming on here again and sharing your knowledge and, you know, just really taking time out. It's just very important for us to, as Nate says, strategize and be thinking about everything, every aspect. I want to thank everyone who's on Facebook. You know, I appreciate y'all tuning in with us. I hope you guys learned something. Doug, thank you for your expertise. Nate, thank you for your expertise.
Thank you,
Venice, I really appreciate you sharing your truth and your story.
Yep.
It's just really great to, you know we have so much knowledge within our community right here if we just ask the questions and we get together, you know. So I really, really, really appreciate everybody for logging in. Teddy has left his information in the chat, so if you were looking for his information, it is there. It's also on our Facebook. Doug has posted it on their chat in the Facebook. So if you have any questions, he is open to you asking. If you want to do a private, consultation with him for him to work with you, give you some more tailored information for your own situation, please feel free to reach out. He's very accessible. Unless you've been a client for a while like myself, then he doesn't talk to me. But but all honesty, he's a great resource to help. And even me, if you want to reach out to me and you want me to set up a email introduction, I can do that for you. So thank you all for tuning in. Share this information. Share this video with people who might not have gotten on. It's just great stuff. So I want to say thank you and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Thanks, guys. Thank you to all. Thanks, Crystal.